Welcome to the Stygian Stilettos Gamer channel. This is Stygian Sis. Please like, share, and subscribe, and find me at twitter.com/StygianSis. Sis. Got my dude Schrodinger with me. Hey! I know, what is life? Oh, happy Tuesday, by the way. Yes. Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, I went to high school with him, so he's cool. Yeah, nice to see you. Let's see. So, yes, we are going to be discussing God of War. I think we should just start kind of going over the first three a little bit, just to kind of refresh, or well, I guess the first five. And there's a comic, but I mean, we could just skim whatever we want to. And then I'd definitely like to talk more about the Norse side of things, because, yeah, exactly. Because I'm very unfamiliar with Norse mythology, certainly in comparison to Greek mythology, which I was pretty obsessed with for a long time. But yeah, Schrodinger, he's going to be our resident expert. And while I'm doing that, we are going to I'll just kind of be playing in the background, so. I'm a bit rusty, so if I die a few times, don't laugh at me, or feel free to laugh at me, that's fine. They hold on, they said they can't hear you for some reason. Nope, I don't. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Blitz. All right, we're good to go.
See okay, can you hear me now? Blitz, can you hear me? Blitz! Blitz, I love you. Velocicoaster.
Yes, all right, awesome.
Blitz and I were both at
Fish
theme
fry.
parks this weekend.
Oh, what'd you say?
We were both at theme parks this weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, different ones. I wish we were at the same one, but
y'all are in the theme park of Stygian now, so
that's right, Stygian's theme park.
But yeah, so what
how
were
you,
say?
Silly? But hey, together in spirit, yes, we were Blitz. We were. What I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by space time was that one of the first things that was really strange playing through God of War was that you're given this axe with no context. You know that it's given to you by your dead wife, and you didn't even know you had a wife. Like this, you found and married somebody between the last game and this one, and not the first wife that you killed in a rage, but this other wife, and she gives you this axe, or she has this axe made for you. You find out that Brokru and Sindru were responsible for creating it, and it's called the Leviathan axe. And Leviathan has no place in Norse mythology whatsoever, other than that it's somewhat of an analog to Jormungandr. But Leviathan is actually biblical.
Yeah.
Which I think gives us some indication where the game may head next.
Yeah, because I mean they of course open up that door with Tyr's mural, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I forget what the religion is, or because you have Egyptian, Norse, Greek, and then I forget what the other one is called though.
Kratos becomes Jesus. I mean, yeah. So there's a lot of mythologies that play in that region of the world. When you get Akkadian, you get Mesopotamian, you get all of the Abrahamic mythos and Quranic mythos. All of that is wrapped into that area. It's the cradle of civilization. So there's a ton of myths that they can draw from. The you know, in every God of War, a lot of liberty is taken, and I think
To say the least.
there's there's something that's fine about that.
Mm-hmm.
One, it's myth, right? And if you look at just within Norse mythology, for instance, there's such a uh, there's we only have two real sources of Norse mythology, and they're the Eddas, the poetic and prose Edda, and even amongst those, the
Mm-hmm.
same stories, the same figures are often conflated, and they're often uh, they often contradict each other. There's tons of retcons, to use the parlance of our modern time.
Yes.
So, the idea that God of War takes some liberties with this has never bothered me at all as a mythology expert or anything like that.
Yeah, for one, I mean, there's already a liberty for the fact that you have Kratos. He doesn't actually exist in in these mythologies, so
Right, right.
you're already introducing characters that aren't there, and then and it's not like he's just a human being walking around. He becomes a god. So yeah, it's a video game. I'm just not that I appreciate game purists to some degree, and
Mm-hmm.
people who are purists to some degree, because sometimes they just go like this Uncharted movie, which I won't spoil anything, but I listened to a review about it. I mean, it is just all over the place. I mean, if it wasn't named Uncharted, you wouldn't even know it was the same story. Is what I've heard. So, you gotta have the purists out there to try to keep these people balanced out to some degree, the people making these games, but at the same time, yeah, I don't want the exact story. I mean, I heard all the stories of Greek mythology and mythology class. I don't need a 1-to-1.
Right, right.
Give me a little
Right,
something to. Yeah, it's entertainment at the end of the day. And Kratos is, I mean. What makes Kratos so great is not just like this and Final Fantasy VII Remake, one of the best reboots of a series. I mean, because it hadn't been like 10 years since the last God of War, and for them to be able to reinvent his character the way they did, and it still feels like Kratos, it is truly amazing.
They added so much soul, and that's something that generally gets lost in reboots or lost in kind of reimagining, is that usually, like, some of the charm is lost, or in an attempt to over explain a character or a characterization, sometimes the kind of the essence or the blank space that you did fill with something that was arguably better gets replaced with something concrete that sucks.
Yeah.
They did the opposite with Kratos. Kratos became one of the most human stand-ins for the player. So it's like an isekai, and Kratos was, our representation into this Norse pantheon. So he's both representing us, but then he also has these family relationships and shows this, really this tenderness, but also like he's still true to what we understand the God of War to be. I mean, it was just a perfect balance was struck. To the point where it's like I wonder how Ragnarok will maintain that, because there seems to be some things on the horizon that will really challenge this character that we created, to the point where he's going to have to either grow or become something that the player doesn't like.
Yeah. One thing I was surprised by, just as a side note, I really thought this was going to be a trilogy, and now I'm thinking, because you're right, I guess they really are going to explore more, because otherwise I just don't see this journey ending after the next game. It's I'm hoping the next game doesn't feel a little rushed. In fact, maybe just because I convinced myself it'd be 3 parts, that I have that fear. But yeah, I guess they really are planning on exploring. I didn't know if that was just going to be kind of something that they lightly touched on, just to show that all these, all of these mythologies exist in the same universe, I guess. But now that you bring up the Leviathan Axe and stuff like that, yeah, and then the fact that it's going to be 2 parts, I'm definitely convinced there's going to be more than
Yeah,
one more
I mean,
game.
supposedly this is the end of this story, but what that actually means for the rest of God of War is unclear. Um, like we don't know. Apparently, it's just the end of the Norse story.
Okay.
We don't know if Kratos survives. It's alluded that Kratos might die. And we might play as Atreus or something like that. Um,
Yeah. You
I'm a
know,
little skeptical. Yeah.
I am
Um,
skeptical, but at the same time, like, the man is tired.
yeah.
Let him rest. Ooh.
Yeah. Let him.
Okay, this is the part where I accidentally get myself killed because I forgot the buttons. Here we go. Okay. Where are my chaos blades? Oh, I don't have them. Thank
You
you.
don't
I
have
forgot
them
this.
yet.
Yeah, this is a new game.
You don't have them yet.
No, I do. Oh, R3. Okay. But yeah, I really don't know. It's up in the air. I'm fine with either conclusion, whether he dies or not. I'm very indifferent about it, honestly. Not because I don't love Kratos, but I don't mind if they make Atreus the new protagonist, basically, if they do
Yeah.
him correctly. You know what I mean? As long as he's not a boring protagonist.
Well, he's not really paced to be boring. And spoiler alert, I mean the idea that he's supposed to be Loki is really interesting. And for those of you that don't know the lore of Loki, unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel comic series, Loki is not Thor's brother. That's not. Loki Loki has actually conflicting accounts of his parentage, but none of them involve being related to Thor in any way, shape, or form. And he's not adopted by Odin or anything like that. So one thing that is really clear though is that they're keeping the story of Ragnarok intact enough to have certain key events be central to it. For instance, Baldur Baldur's death marks the beginning of Ragnarok, and we know that Loki in Norse mythology is directly responsible for Baldur's death, although he didn't do it on purpose, or he didn't do it with his own hand. He had this blind guy throw some mistletoe at him, and that causes the chain of events that creates the end of days of Ragnarok, or the twilight of the gods. So that there's all these little through lines that to real Norse mythology that give us just enough of a connection to it to feel like, okay, this is rooted in something, with a lot of legacy. But because of how lenient they are with the rest of mythology, really anything can happen. Anything.
Yeah, this is a game where you really can. Hey, Phil, how you doing?
Phil.
This really is a game where it's just so unpredictable. The last thing I would have thought, especially the way that the last one ended. I knew he was alive, but I was like, how the hell are they going to resurrect this game? I would have never. I mean, Cory Barlog is going to go down as one of the greatest directors in gaming history. For him to come up with this, oh man, it is. So they've already proven themselves to be able to keep this game alive, even when it kind of seemed like that was kind of the end of it. Maybe some spin-off games about, but other than that, what am I doing? Oh, maybe I need Loki to do something here. Hold on. And now I'm calling him Loki. What? Hold on.
Hey, nobody. I just recently read through Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman, and I'm still so upset by the hand Hod was dealt.
Oh, yeah. I got
Neil Gaiman is tremendous, just in general.
The
twist with Baldur should not have been revealed, in my opinion. rolling on the floor laughter guy. You mean
You mean the fact that he couldn't feel anything?
yeah. So, and that's a little bit of a discordant thing from Norse mythology. So, in Norse mythology, Baldur is immortal. He has only one weakness, and it is mistletoe. But the reason is because he's so beautiful, like nobody wants him to die. And so Frigg just, grants him an immortality spell. Like everybody loves Baldur. He's, he's this beautiful creation. There's very few.
Are we talking about the same person? I mean, we're talking about.
I know. So the Baldur
because Baldur looks like a lot of people one state down from me that beautiful is not the example.
No, so that's definitely a liberty they took. And the tattoos thing. The tattoos that too are like this thing, and this is a real common misconception, is that there's not even a word for tattoo in any Norse language, in Elder Futhark, or in which is the language that you see. When you see runes in God of War, it's an Elder Futhark, which is a language. So it's about 500 years detached from where we actually get the Eddas, the prose and poetic Eddas. So it'd be the equivalent of us reading Old English today, like us using Old English to each other. It's so different that it's kind of unrecognizable. So that's sort of a mistake that this makes. But the idea that the Norse Vikings and stuff like that are heavily tattooed and stuff like that, that's kind of a projection from Celtic society, like Celtic culture, which there is a case to be made that there was Viking influence in Celtic culture and vice versa, but it's very unlikely that any Vikings actually even had tattoos.
Yeah, that seems like a new concept for me as well. I mean, I don't know much about Vikings, but I don't at least in media I have seen. For some reason, my computer, I don't know if the thing froze or whatever, it would not let me get out of holding that thing. So I got to do this part again real quick. But I'm just explaining for people looking. It literally would not. He would not move. I don't know if it froze up or whatever, but PS5, yeah. But but yeah, that I did not associate Vikings with tattoos. That's not something I have ever associated with Vikings.
And you know what though?
I associate Rose Nyland with Vikings. I associate horned helmets.
Horned helmets, yeah. Those are real things.
A lot of anger.
Anger, yeah, but there is sort of a misconception that I don't want to say that there wasn't violence in any culture. Most tribal cultures had, that there's going to be some violence, a little bit. But generally, tribal cultures that survive for a while do so prosperously. And quote unquote Vikings are no exception. There is this narrative about quote unquote Viking culture that I hate to say was written by the victors of a struggle. And
as usual,
in much and in much the same way that and I'm not saying that Christians are like this, but at the time there was a era of colonialism to what happened with Olaf and to Norse culture, where Norse culture suffered the same kind of eradication that we saw when certain faith sets were introduced in the Americas.
Yeah.
The fact that we even call them the Americas, for instance. And so realistically, like this kind of idea of these strong Viking warriors and stuff like that, it's not that didn't exist. It's just, or that the stories don't tell great tales of warriors. It's just that it's not a very accurate representation of an entire culture that was able to survive for nearly 1,000 years, at least, possibly longer.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. It's just kind of the way that things go. But we're talking about the stories that they told, and there are a lot of stories that Norse mythology has inspired, from the Lord of the Rings to Final Fantasy VII, because there's a real excitement and interest to the way the myths were composed, but that being said, some of the stories didn't age well. Yeah,
what a bitch. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree.
Go ahead.
Oh man.
Yeah, go ahead. I literally haven't touched this game in half a year, so like I'm just.
No, the Revenants are so gnarly. I remember.
Come on, dude.
My first Revenant was so brutal. And then you don't have your Chaos Blades yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm so used to fighting with them too.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I might kill this. I might kill her.
Will.
If she doesn't stop moving so fast. Sorry, go ahead. All right. I lived through that.
The point I was making, though, is that, not all of the stories, even though they have this big impact on the way that we write our stories now, age that well. And really, like, how do you make an interesting story about Baldur being so beautiful that nobody wanted him to die, and then his mother loved him? Like, the idea that he could feel nothing, that there was this, that's not really part of the myth. Like,
yeah. But
instead, we created this, this sort of cautionary tale about, the cost of that kind of thing, of like, what is the cost of losing all sensation? What is the cost of dulling everything? What is a painless life?
Yeah.
And so it creates this character that's, I think, a really compelling. I think Baldur is surprisingly compelling, and his entrance is so interesting in the beginning. Like,
I know. I was like, who is this hillbilly?
I know, this weird Celtic redneck just starts wailing on you, and you're like, dude, I killed Apollo. Like, what? This is dumb. You know. And,
well, and that scene is so powerful because one, you just have this rando show up to your door, and he's like, I know who you are, and it's real ominous. And he's thinking, and Kratos is thinking that they finally found him. And then it turns, and then he actually starts hitting Kratos. Well, he slaps him first. Oh my goodness. Woo. Let me get to that health. Woo. Okay. And then you see the restraint that Kratos has learned over the years since God of War, because he would have, just that dude showing up to his door saying all that, he would have
been wearing him as a skin suit. Yeah.
Yes. So then you get to see this new side of Kratos. You realize, and he's got that fatherhood about him again, because he's thinking about his son being in the next room. And then, like you said, Kratos finally is like, okay, you started this. And then Baldur, I don't know about anybody else, but I was shocked when he sent Kratos flying. It was a great opening scene, and I like that they just kind of, you go from Berengar's wife. They throw a lot of information at you, but it also doesn't feel like that at the same time.
Right.
And what's great is that first line that he says to Atreus, when Atreus says, everything feels different now, and he says everything is different. Try not to dwell on it. They're talking to the audience. Yeah. They're saying, look, this is all different. They don't go through the point of setting you up, giving you a like how Ascension is, where they give you this whole spiel at the beginning of the game and then go into it. They just toss you right in there. You're bearing your new wife. You're like, oh my God, I got a wife. I got a kid here.
That's right.
I'm in Midgard. What the hell is going on? Yeah, so it was a really solid opening to the game. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what a strange contrast to the way that exposition worked in the other three games, or in the other four games,
Mm-hmm.
and even the comics. Like, it's just, it upgraded to this really economic cinematic storytelling style. Like, and we talk about remake a lot, and remake employs this a lot too. But um, one of the things that makes this game a game of the generation, like, I think a lot of people will sort of universally agree that God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn were sort of, the AAA games of the generation.
I have
And
not played it yet. And I got to play Horizon Zero. But go ahead.
it's great. It's great. The use of cinematics and cinematic storytelling in games it's not new, but it's starting to get to a point where it's really in my mind cemented games as sort of the apex of human storytelling potential right now. Like, we can tell stories in such a complete way, using all these different methods, because God of War employs all this different types of lore. Like, for instance, you got that bestiary, so you can look at background lore and look through the things. You come upon these storyboards that give you enhanced lore.
Mm.
But even if you were to skip all of that, you have an idea of what's happening based solely on, like, the cinematic exposition that happens in this game. The relationship between you and your son. The relationship that all the just little tiny things that let you know that we're watching two people grieve together. Like,
Yeah.
it's so beautifully done. And that, with the backdrop of these really interesting characters, with these highly established myths that have already always existed to kind of teach humanity about itself. It's sort of like I said, it's kind of the apex of human creativity to me.
Because what
uh,
they do is they give you this world most people have never explored. Most people don't know Greek mythology, Norse mythology, likely. Um,
yeah,
they give you all this all this knowledge because you're learning, of course. I mean, now
yeah,
the with the grain of salt, because as we said, these games aren't exactly accurate, but you're still learning a lot. There's still a lot to be learned when you're playing games like this. But at the heart of this game is just, like you said, a man and a son trying to find a way to move on
right,
when the woman in their life has died.
yeah,
So they keep the story grounded in that sense. While you have all this stuff being thrown at you, with the fighting Baldur, you got the looming issue of Odin happening, because Kratos knows eventually they're gonna cross paths. I mean, you can't be the God of War who destroyed the Greek pantheon and not
right,
eventually catch the eye of the Norse god. I mean, he'd be a fool not to pay attention to you.
right, right.
So, but within all that, it always comes back to this relationship, which is great. And then just knowing Kratos' history with his wife, his old wife, Lysandra and Calliope, and it just puts so much more as an OG, I guess, for lack of a better term, God of War fan. It puts so much more weight on everything that happens between them.
Right.
Because Kratos is learning to love again too. I mean, he had to, not that he ever lost the ability. You see it in little pockets. You
Right.
see it with the way that he acted with Pandora, but you also see it that before he goes in and slaughters his family by accident, he could
Yeah.
have killed that old lady. He just pushed her to the side.
Yeah.
When the other when he finds his mom again, when he finds his brother again, he could have just killed his brother, but he didn't want to.
Right.
And one scene that I found impactful was, I forget what the name of the game is, but oh no, it was Ascension, I think. He finds that Oracle whose eyes have been gouged out, and like he's trying to save her, and he's really loving the way that he's talking to her. So you see those pockets of humanity still in there,
Right.
but just because of circumstances, everything that's happened to him, he's done as much as he can to close off that side of him, because love is a weakness, and he is a Spartan, he is a warrior, and he
Right.
understands that he would not have. I'm sure he thinks he would not have survived had he not closed off that side of himself. Anyway, and now I'm just going into Kratos because I love
No,
Kratos.
Kratos is he's the star of the game, and it's titled after him for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably,
Oh my god, I'm definitely dead now. Go ahead.
um, invariably, the fact that he's the god of war, he's kind of destined to come into conflict with the Norse god of war, and I'm very excited to see what that looks like. We
Yeah.
saw in Ragnarok, the trailers for Ragnarok, we saw Tyr. We got our first look at what Tyr looks like, and he looks kind of different than I expected. Partially because there are depictions of Tyr in God of War that make him look like Kratos, and so when we see Tyr, we see like a element of what the striped paint, but we see a full head of hair. He's tall. His eyes
Real
are
tall.
strange.
Now
We
Kratos is
don't.
not short, but he is like, what is
Yeah,
he, like 8 foot tall?
yeah. He looks. Yeah, he's like a giant, but for real.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's multiple
That's where that goes. Okay.
heritages for Tyr as well. The almost every character in Norse mythology has multiple origin stories that contradict each other. But Tyr being Jotunborn is not an uncommon interpretation, meaning that even though he's brothers of Odin, he's
I would
half
hate to be the brother of anybody that's in any of these. They
I
treat
know.
their family horrifically.
Yeah, and most stories in not just Norse mythology, but just Norse storytelling involves family,
If I survive
and
this,
there's
it'll be
always
terrible.
these setups that will sort of force a like a the setup will be that someone will have to choose between an oath that they've taken and the life of their family,
Mm-hmm.
or a promise to their family. Like very, very family centric storytelling, and that's something that I could really feel the essence of in the way that a lot of these myths are retold, even though the myths are somewhat wildly inaccurate. For instance, Baldur and
And Tyr as
Freya.
well, to some degree. I was listening to somebody before this, and
Hmm.
they said that, for one, Tyr is supposed to not. I believe Fenrir or one of the wolves bit off one of his hands. The fact he has 2 hands is incorrect.
Right.
And he also wasn't that significant. I hear in Norse mythology. I don't know how much you know about the
Yeah.
origins of him. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tyr's hand is bit off by one of the children of Loki,
Okay.
Fenrir. Fenrir, Jormungandr, and Hel are all children of Loki. And since Loki's on Kratos' back, it feels like that doesn't make sense. But actually, um, because of the way that um, time and the fates and the interwoven fabric of Ragnarok, the cycle of Ragnarok, it's not so disconnected from the way that storytelling works in Norse mythology that there isn't some potential exposition coming later, like that not necessarily time travel. That's the wrong way to say it, but from a functional standpoint, it's very likely that Loki,
Mm-hmm.
who we see as Atreus, grows up. We are introduced to the person that he eventually marries and falls in love with, Angrboda. we see her in the trailer.
Yeah.
And their spawn are, one is the world serpent, who we've seen. One is Fenrir, the wolf that bites off Tyr's hand, and who's provides the howl of Ragnarok, and Hel, who is she's the keeper of Hel. It's called Helheim in this, but it's actually just called Hel.
Hell. Yeah.
Helheim.
Hel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in Heim just means, or Heimer just means home, right? So the home of Hel it's not like horribly inaccurate, and you do see some mistranslations of Norse and stuff using that kind of language, but technically it's just Hel. And yes, that is where the Judeo-Christian word comes from as well.
And then, you know what, when you mentioned the time traveling thing, or at least time looping or something like that, yeah, mm-hmm. because I was immediately reminded of that horn and who blew it. And there's a lot of people who think that Loki is the one that blew that horn. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what your thoughts on, about it, but especially the fact that Jormungandr already exists, and Loki clearly isn't producing children right now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the whole symbolism of Jormungandr, eating the tail is kind of like, like that, circles are infinite, because,
right.
You see what I'm saying? That's
Ouroboros,
to,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, the thing that, I've got my most annoying prediction, and I've had several people get really mad at me about this, and I could be wrong. It's just I have this sneaking suspicion that that the opening of Ragnarok will be the fight with Thor, mm-hmm. and that Kratos will just obliterate him, and we will never see Thor again. Yeah. Like, there's this big buildup, and part of the reason I think that is because when you throw the Leviathan axe into the water. First of all, Leviathan being a generally depicted as this long serpent, and it was gifted to you for a reason by Faye, and we have no idea what Faye's deal is. We don't even know how she died. No. And there was a question earlier. Somebody asked if we thought that was going to be explored. They have to explore.
Oh, absolutely.
That in the next part. So we don't even know how Faye died, but we do know that there's some kind of master plan that involved that axe.
Hey, Aaron. Mm-hmm.
And when you get that axe back, after you throw it into the water, you get it back. You get this little tiny message that says that that the blade has been enchanted by Jormungandr's poison. Mm-hmm. And Jormungandr's poison is venomous to Thor. It's what kills Thor. So I think one touch of the Leviathan axe to Thor is going to make this... it'll be kind of like... I'm not sure if you saw Kill Bill Volume 2, but there's a scene where there's a tremendous amount of buildup to this fight with the one-eyed antagonist, okay. And it's like hours of buildup. It's like 2 movies worth of buildup, and the fight ends immediately when the protagonist rips out the other eye. And I think this is going to be the same kind of moment. It's going to be like there's all this buildup, like the end of the last game had this build up to this fight with Thor was going to be epic. I don't think Thor's even remotely the big bad.
Yeah.
Of God of War 2. I think that Odin is set up. We're seeing little Tyr is the setup, and Freya.
Yeah, Freya. Freya for sure. And you know what? You actually struck a nerve with me, because I was actually thinking the same thing about Odin, but I also had the same the fact that they've already released photos, the way that the last game ends, mm-hmm. You're gonna have to fight Thor early on. I mean, they can't
Yeah.
justify that ending as just a dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they could. It'd just be lazy writing, and I just don't think they're going to do that. So you're going to be fighting Thor from the jump. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't killed pretty quick, and he's not the main. Especially because this is, if it were 3 parts, I might feel differently. But now that I know that it's 2 parts, you're gonna be going through another pantheon of gods essentially. So
Yeah.
I think the reason I was thinking about it with Odin is because he sends out a lot of people to do his bidding. He puts out a lot of propaganda about himself. He plays up these stories or changes these stories about how the different what are they called, the giants, like you just see
The Jotun.
yeah, you see all these lies and twisting of stories that he does. So I was feeling like when you get to Odin, it's going to be like your battle is going to be getting to Odin, not Odin. That's how I was feeling about it. And I'm still up in the air about it, but now that I know that Thor is not going to be the main, antagonist, in my opinion, then that leaves it up to Freya. We've already killed all the Valkyries. It's not going to be, I'm trying to think who else would, unless you ultimately have to kill Tyr, or they throw a whole twist on you and somehow Kratos is corrupted and Atreus has to kill him. I mean, it could go anywhere at this point.
Yeah, and the thing with Atreus, there's the the mural at the end, which is really it's hard to say what that looks like, but
okay.
yeah, it has, you have no idea what that's about, and it's intentionally that way. It's like it's a really well done mystery, because it's makes you think, oh, the God of War is going to die, but then you're like, oh, that's too obvious, but then you're like, but is it? And so it's a masterful, like, because it's not just that they show that mural and you see what looks like Atreus or Loki, doing something that sucks the soul out of Kratos. It's that you see an acknowledgement that Kratos sees it, isn't concerned by it, and he's just kind of given himself up to phase plans at this point. Like, whatever will be. I trust in my wife's vision, and so I'm excited to see how they explore that.
And I think that's a lot of why he, especially after Faye dying, a lot of why he decided to really start teaching Atreus, because while he loves his son, he knows he's not going to be there forever, and probably may even be planning. I mean, we are talking about somebody who's killed himself twice. First off, he just buried another wife, and he didn't kill this one. We hope, but
we hope.
But he like I said, he's tired. He spent so much time fighting and hiding and fighting and hiding. I think he just wants whatever, like you said, c'est la vie. If it happens, it happens. I don't think he'd purposely kill himself, but I think at the same time he just is not afraid of death, and if it comes down to that, it is what it is. He probably would prefer to be able to die, frankly. Because there is a cruelty to immortality. That we see that with Vincent. Vincent in Red 13, where they had a conversation. Red 13 is sad that he's gonna have to watch all his friends die. They're gonna far outlive Cloud and the rest of them. Hopefully Sephiroth isn't still hanging around 500 years later. but there is definitely a cruelty to living forever and ever, and generation after generation of just watching people that you love die. So I see him as just content with whatever is gonna happen. Oh, I forgot this kid of mine screwed that up. Okay. How did I?
So okay.
Let's go to the comments real quick, because I
okay.
Sorry about that. By the way, Joey, Sephiroth versus Kratos. I think Kratos, because ultimately Hubris always gets Sephiroth. I mean, he let a little 16-year-old village boy who was just, madly in love and got pissed off because he decided to kill his mom and try to kill his crush, I mean, like, just because Cloud had no training whatsoever. I mean, like, he had 2 years of, like, grunt training. But I think the reason he was able to kill him is because of hubris, like I said. And then just Cloud's pure resolve as well. So you see Kratos and Cloud, and I made this point before, Kratos and Cloud have this ability to think so quick on their feet in the heat of battle, be able to change strategy on a dime, and you actually see a lot of that in Cloud. They put it audibly, so you can, because he has team members. But as things change in a battle, especially the first couple chapters, as things change in a battle, he's quickly thinking up what's the next thing to do. And Kratos is very much the same way. So when Sephiroth stabs him through the chest, rather than just being like, oh shit, well, I guess I'm gone, he decides to keep impaling himself to get enough leverage to pick. I mean, Sephiroth is what, 6'4" something insane.
Yeah.
He picks this man up and tosses his ass off of a, but just to be able to think, I mean, you think you're about to die, but Cloud just has that focus about him, that he immediately takes what seems like an impossible situation to his advantage. And we see this with Kratos all the time, especially in God of War 3, the way that he's killing these gods left and right, with everything in the world being thrown at him. And the reason I mentioned the hubris is because eventually enemies always give themselves away to them. Especially ones that can talk. So Helios keeps talking shit, Poseidon keeps talking shit, and they're just giving him, as they talking shit, they're just giving him more time to think about what's the next thing to do. So yeah, I definitely go for Kratos. That's me. I don't know about you. I didn't think I had so many thoughts about that.
I know. It's one of the most common what ifs I've seen though is between those two characters. I don't know what it is about that. There is a question here. Is the giant bird Hel?
No.
No. The giant bird in Hel is Hreysvelgr. Mm-hmm. And again, that's another thing that doesn't quite belong. Hreysvelgr is an inn. Hreysvelgr sits atop Yggdrasil, the world tree, in Norse mythology, and only one of the roots of the world tree is in Hel. So there's a bunch of stuff like that. It's just like they wanted to show off Hreysvelgr, and they needed a place to do it.
It was intended. I hear it was intended to be a boss battle at some point. So that also might explain why there's a random ass giant bird sitting in Helheim.
Yeah. I haven't. I don't know. I hope we still get that fight.
Yeah. I think now. Speaking of, I love how we said we go over. I mean, I like the way the conversation is just flowing naturally, though. So I'm fine.
Yeah.
Because scripting something out if we're not interested in the topic doesn't.
Yeah.
I think the only way, if he's able to resolve the feud with Freya, and I am dying. I think the only way he does it is bringing Baldur back to life. I don't see how he gets around it otherwise.
I don't think that's going.
I think he's gonna have to kill him. I'm sorry. I think he's gonna have to kill her. I mean,
yeah, she's gonna die, and that's his whole thing. Is he's he's very disruptive to the ecosystem of Ragnarok. Like they're constantly reminding him that things aren't supposed to go this way, and that's why that's interesting. Is that's Odin's endgame. Odin does everything that he does to maintain his immortality.
Yeah.
He sacrifices his eye in Mimir's pool so that he can gain the wisdom necessary to survive his defeat in Ragnarok. That's the entirety of his plans, his ministrations. And so when something is disruptive to this cycle that is detrimental to Odin, Odin is going to take interest in what Kratos represents, and possibly see him as an opportunity. And so, that's why I think he's the real big bad. That's why I think that, if there's anything that, for instance, if Loki is absorbing Kratos' life force in that, if that's really what's happening, it seems like the end game of Loki would be to defeat Odin.
Yeah. I see.
Because
I see.
Odin wants something from Kratos that will prevent his death. Because that's all Odin ever wants. And does that mean a permanent death for Kratos, or is there something so essentially immortal about Kratos that that they're going to find a way to keep him alive? And I could see them doing either, and the character's built in such a way that I don't really care. I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
and that's a well-designed character. Like, if you don't see a character's arc, and you don't want it, you don't care which way it goes because you have so much faith in the way that it's been portrayed so far. That's the mark of a good character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it makes sense if you think about his past. It makes sense with his character as well. It wouldn't feel just like a cheap thing to get, just like a cheap tearjerker.
Right.
Death would, in some ways, almost seem kind.
Yeah.
I keep saying, I'm fine with him living. But you're absolutely right. The more I think about it, if he lives or dies, as long as it makes sense to the story, and I know it will, based on what we've seen so far. Either one. But Atreus being the one to defeat Odin, that definitely makes a lot of sense too. Probably with the help of Tyr. Well, I don't know what role Tyr is going to play, to be honest. What do you think about what role Tyr is going to play? I mean, I forget why they said they needed to free him in the trailer. They mentioned they had to free him
for help with Odin they just know that they know that they need his help, and they don't actually give something as specific as needed to defeat Odin, but that seems to be the really obvious one. And we see statues of Odin in the trailer, which is I mean, or what looks like they could be Odin. Like, Odin is generally depicted as holding Gungnir, which is his spear, and we see statues of a revered figure holding a spear in some of the towns that we see. So I think that along with the crows and stuff like that, it's really clear that he's the primary threat.
They do a really good job of keeping his, even though he's never in the game, they do a really good job of keeping his presence alive through storytelling, through, like you said, the crows, the statues, the vestiges of his destruction. I mean, just hearing about how all of the what did you call? Oh God, I forgot the name already. The giants,
the Jotun,
yeah, how they all died. So he's always that looming threat. Yeah. Overcasting. And by the way, I knew Tyr was alive. The second that game ended, I said he is alive. Because it is the same reason I think Cloud's dad is alive. If I don't see a body, I don't believe it. Okay? And I think that's why they had to be so definitive with Faye being dead. I mean, burning the body, she's gone. Okay? Unless she comes back as a bird or something, she is out of here. Okay? But going through the whole thing, and they tell how he died. Oh, he, just hearsay. Yeah, I think he was killed by A, B, and C. I didn't believe it for a second.
That's right. Yeah.
Because that's just, I've seen too many shows like Hawaii Five-0 and stuff like that where somebody was supposedly dead, body never found, and that's exactly how they cliffhang Cloud's dad. His belongings were found, but I don't know if there was blood or not, but you can fake blood. But the fact that there's nobody, a monster supposedly ate you, but there's nobody.
It's pure Chekhov's gun. Yeah. And it's just a waste of exposition. And economy of time is something that, we're talking about games with like legitimate writers, right? They can actually weave a story together that have an idea of how to do so. So they're not gonna just blow a bunch of words and space and time. I mean, that's expensive. It's expensive.
Because they just say he's dead. They would just leave it at that. Oh, where's Tyr? He's dead. and then he wouldn't continue to be a large part of the conversations going on. They keep telling these different stories of Tyr. They're following Tyr's path, essentially, to ultimately figuring out how to kill Baldur and whatever, all the stuff's going on. He keeps coming back up. Whereas, if it was somebody who just was dead and gone, it'd be a passing comment, if a comment at all, and that'd be it. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Do you remember Thor's earlier design in God of War 4? How much of that do you think was Marvel inspired? Well, I mean, a lot of...
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You mean like the costume? Yeah.
They're talking about those statues because they look more like the traditional... Like when I see it, I think of the comic book Thor, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, Marvel, duh. But I mean what he actually looked like in like the animated series as opposed to Chris whatever.
Hemsworth?
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think the idea is that one, either he's let himself go, and that's kind of consistent with his character, just like a this kind of privileged individual that just takes his own power for granted, and so he's sort of let himself go, or he's just it's a depiction of somebody with that kind of power that's sort of narcissistic and sees himself differently than he actually is.
It's a very Donald Trump move.
Yeah, it's very
like how he had all those fake what was it, People magazines or whatever it was, all those fake covers of People magazine on display. Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. That and or the same thing that Odin is kind of doing. He puts out a bit of propaganda for himself. Right. It could be a mixture of all of it. Yeah.
It could be a mixture of all of it. And, really, like, there was some controversy about Thor, I guess. I didn't actually hear it. I heard people responding to controversy, but I never actually saw any of the controversy because I guess I just noticed too late. I'm sure it existed, but, people have this idea of what Thor looks like. And does Marvel has an impact on that? Sure. But there are old English paintings that sort of depict him a certain way, and there are old statues. Like realistically the actual literature says virtually nothing about how any of these characters look. They don't spend a lot of time. We know that Frigg or Freya is beautiful. We know that Baldur is beautiful. There are cases where Thor is able to pass for a woman because he can cross dress to do things. He hatches some weird plans that involve cross dressing. And there's stuff like that. But other than that, we really don't know what he looks like. There are some ancient statues of him that that are about 800 years old, and in those, they're depicted as he's depicted as thin, but there's also they were used for worship, right? They were used for worship, and they're these pieces of wood, and it's hard to say if they're pretty basic, and they were likely had to be hidden because if they were found, you could be put to death for heresy. So whether or not they were actually accurate to anything that's expected of the depiction, it's kind of beside the point. So I think that they made this characterization of Thor based on, um, his character. Like they made the way he look be representative of somebody that misrepresents himself in stories, more than anything else. And that's yet another reason why I think that it's going to be a total shutout.
I mean,
Like
God
it's
of
going
War
to
is very
be
realistic as far like they try to play into the realism as opposed to,
yeah,
because the point is all these gods are not virtuous and selfless
right,
and all this other stuff that they portray themselves to be. A lot of them are monsters. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I mean, at least that's the way that they're trying to. That's the way that they depict them in this game. I mean, obviously, I don't know about the real thing, but that makes a lot of
right,
sense to me. It reminds me of politicians. Essentially, these guys are politicians to a large degree.
right. Absolutely. So we're giving these people we're giving people, right? They're gods, but they're, for all intents and purposes, people. They have agency, they have language, they have all the stuff that makes people people, and then we're adding godlike powers to them. What are they really gonna be like? And this is it.
Yeah, they sleeping with their sisters and brothers. They're
It's going to be messed up. It's going to be exactly how it would be. Like um, it's sort of the way that some of the more modern comic books give what would really happen if people had superpowers. Like if you look at the boys and some of these Invincible, like what would there
Deadpool.
really be like?
Yeah.
And yeah, Deadpool was a good example. And it's that they would have all the same variety of morality as people, and so and ultimately that's what the myths meant. That's what the myths were meant to do, is they were meant to tell stories about humanity in this fantastical way that made them more interesting, but they ultimately taught people about, it was a way of humanity looking at itself. And so
Yeah, because and with the propaganda, like who's gonna want to worship the true Zeus?
right,
This womanizer who abandons his kids all over the place, is trying to kill his own sons, sleeping around on his wife who's also his sister. I mean, nobody's gonna want to worship that. So yeah, they have to
yeah,
put out. Yeah, they have to
yeah,
put out propaganda to get people to actually.
fluff pieces, yeah,
And it's a way of controlling the people. You can I say a politician, but you could also just think of them as another race of another species. I guess I don't know what you would call it, but you got the humans, you have the gods, you have this and that. That's
yeah,
they are just deities because they are obviously stronger than human beings and have a lot more powers. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Let's see.
Zeus sounds like my kind of guy.
Freya's unusual wedding. That was a fun tale. Yes, that's the story that Thor cross dresses on, and that's certainly something to look into. Do you remember Thor's early design? Okay, Ragnarok is the end game of Norse mythology. Yeah, exactly. So, it'd be really weird for a game called Ragnarok to not end the Norse mythology saga.
Yeah, I
Um,
think they might have even said that.
only
Yeah,
Athena is a
because I'm
guest
unfamiliar
script.
with Norse
Norse
mythology.
mythology.
I wasn't sure how long they could, for instance, stretch out Fimbulwinter, or how long of a time period Ragnarok was supposed to happen in, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I thought it'd be a little more
Right.
fleshed out in a trilogy rather than a. So, but I'm definitely down for whatever happens in the next game. They have
Yeah.
blown away all expectations of a God of War 4 as far as I'm concerned. So I'm sure God of War
Yeah.
5 will be fantastic. Death is a mercy to the man that lives forever. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Kratos has had such a shit life from beginning to
Yeah.
end. Starting with this this is the story of a boy who couldn't save his brother and made a vow to never be that weak again, and it just goes from there. And that whole thing with the Zeus mistaking Deimos for Kratos, because Kratos was the actual marked son that was meant to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of a lot of stories. Harry Potter came to mind. you know, that's something that you see. Man, and Ares is an asshole too. Like I said, I was watching through everything that happened. Man, Ares just used the hell out of Kratos. It is no wonder that he turned out the way he did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But like I said, you also still see that human side to him, because he was devastated by accidentally killing his family. And then having to wear the ashes on his skin. It's just cruelty on top of cruelty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when Ares setting him up to do it, I was like, man, I was so glad when Ares died.
Yeah. Ares was a very satisfying death.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I remember, do you remember, like, that God of War came out around the time of Gladiator. And, you know, you could feel a lot of thematic similarity in the struggle. And so, you know, I'm not saying it felt cheap or like a ripoff, but it's kind of indicative of how much, as a writer, that you know, the team behind God of War has grown. You know, in terms of coming up with new fleshed out ideas. Like, how could you know, if you look at the sort of, it was kind of a one and done sort of, you know, after God of War, like the first God of War, like that story felt over. Like that story felt like like really done. So, you know, that they were able to push out 3 more, it felt kind of like milking a franchise. And so when 4 came out, I remember being incredibly skeptical. Like I had zero faith that it was going to be anything other than, you know, like a
cash grab.
Desperate cash grab. And for it to be the sort of expertise, sublime story that it was one of the most pleasant surprises of the generation, for sure.
Yes, and God of War is definitely one of those games, because I loved God of War 3. But it's definitely one of the games that improved over time because of the compilation. Because I remember playing God of War and wondering what the hell I played the first time. Like, I didn't really get it. But yeah, you're right. It seemed like it was over. And then God of War 2, I actually never finished it the first time so I kind of got bored at one point. And I was like, man, this series, I don't know if this is going to work out. And then God of War 3 came out, and I loved it, but that game could have almost happened in a vacuum. I mean, it didn't even seem like God of War 1 and
God
of War
3
relevant.
could have absolutely happened in the vacuum. And I personally liked God of War 1, 2, and Ascension more than 3, personally. And I know that's Ascension's kind of an apparently an unpopular opinion, but it is mine. So, you know.
I loved God of War 1, but yeah, as far as story, being able to get the other parts of the compilation fills in a lot more about Kratos' character. That makes him a lot more, I don't know if relatable is the word, but you understand you understand him. Yeah, more developed.
More developed. And there is a degree of relatability, and even it's one of those things that if a character is well developed, you can relate with how you think you would feel in their position. Even if you can't directly sympathize, because nobody can sympathize with the god of war because there are no gods of war. You know, you can sympathize with loss. You can sympathize with, you know, people that respond to situations with the tools that they have in the way that Kratos did. And
you can
I think
sympathize with being tricked, you know? I mean,
yeah, you can sympathize with being tricked. You can sympathize with losing family. You can sympathize with feeling responsible for the loss of your family. Like almost everybody that's lost somebody feels some kind of responsible, even if they absolutely weren't.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
for sure. That is true. Yeah, great.
How are we doing here? Are you having fun with these puzzles?
Yeah, I'm just kind of dilly dallying, as Tifa would say.
Being inside this mountain it's sort of a chore. I remember feeling like, oh god, this inside this mountain, because when I do new game pluses for to get the the slap skag, to get the material for all the new game plus stuff. I would almost sometimes just like ask myself if it was worth it to turn around in this part. But it does really get, when the lake lowers again is when I think the game really feels like it picks up. I love dealing with the dragons, and and it's not saying that the game didn't pick up beforehand, but it's definitely my favorite part.
It definitely gets better when the second time that it lowers, for sure. And you know, it's also because we have played it. It reminds me of I always go back to Final Fantasy, but yeah, there are certain parts of Final Fantasy VII where it's really good the first time, because right now during the game, you know, we're still figuring out their relationship. They're actually kind of bonding in a lot of these parts. You still got the mystery of, right now in the game, you think you're just trying to get up the mountain so that you can spread the ashes. But of course, since we're only a couple hours into the game, we know that that's not where it's going to end. So then you have all this mystery about how is this going to turn around. But when you played it 100 times like we have,
yeah,
because I actually delayed playing Final Fantasy VII for half a year, remake, because I wasn't done like obsessing over this game yet. I played it late because, like I said, I didn't have any faith in God of War 4. Honestly, I didn't watch the trailers, nothing. So, but eventually I was like, yeah, let me go ahead and just give it a shot. You know, what the hell. And I had gotten out of gaming for a while, but it blew away all my expectations. Like I said. So, and I was trying to platinum it as well, so that's why I can only focus on one game at a time, really. You know, like, I'm one of those players. I have to. So
yeah, I used to. Streaming has really changed the way I consume games, because I can't do that anymore, and
yeah, it sucks because I keep thinking about Remake Part 2, and I'm like, do I even want to stream it, or do I just want to play it first and then stream it? You know,
I know.
It is plaguing me.
I know.
Same with Ragnarok. I'm like, do I really want to? Because like what I'm doing right now, I can't half concentrate on what I'm doing because I'm talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm gonna miss all of the story trying to talk to the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough grind, but you know, it also makes you like when a short game comes out, I'm relieved now because of streaming. Like I can do this all in one sitting on streaming, you know, and so it does sort of change the way that you consume games, and I'm not sure in a good way, but it you know, in a different way for sure.
Yeah.
Hard to argue that.
Are you gonna do Strangers of Paradise?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And, you know, that's a multiplayer thing, so, you know, Blitz and Fish Fried Cat and Legions and I are all going to play it. And...
I didn't even know that. I'm just buying it because it's Final Fantasy.
I know. There's that too. It's really busy this next couple of weeks. I mean, like I've got Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West, which um, has blown away all my expectations. And as somebody that really loves nature too, like that's my other passion is backpacking and hiking. And I've been to a lot of these places. It's sort of surreal to see the way that a lot of my favorite places on Earth are recreated in Horizon Zero Dawn. It's hard to. It's one of those things that uh, if you have no idea what it's like to actually witness these places, it's hard to describe to other people. But like places like Zion National Park and Big Sur and stuff that's depicted in Forbidden West, like you can look at pictures of those things and you can acknowledge that the pictures look beautiful, etc., but they do not even come close to what it's like being there in person. And somehow even closer than pictures, Horizon Forbidden West has like allowed me to recapture the feeling of seeing those things. And it's kind of an emotional experience. Like I just came across what is is supposed to be Pfeiffer State or Julia Pfeiffer State Beach in Horizon Forbidden West, and that's where I proposed to my wife. Like
Wow.
it's crazy to see. Like it's this unbelievably beautiful place, and to see that kind of captured in Horizon Forbidden West it's that's almost half the beauty for me. Plus, it's just this really well done, set piece and commentary on survival and what's valuable and creating bridges. There's some really sharp socio-political commentary in it, so that's really good. That's really distracting.
But
And
then
then
again, she has a
personally,
couple whispers of hair on her chin, so
oh God,
we can't enjoy it because of that.
God, what I mean, just uh,
The
uh
incels just
I
ruin
know
everything.
they do.
Like,
They
no
really
wonder you
do.
don't get laid. You think women don't have facial hair? I mean, like, I mean, not the whole bit. I mean, well, there are women with that, but you know what I mean? Like, everybody has a little tiny something, you know? Like,
Absolutely.
good
And
God.
yeah, and who cares? I mean, like, really, like, I am so glad that they depicted Aloy like as the kind of badass that she would be. Like she's gotten beefier because she's learned to survive. She has
Yeah.
crooked teeth because there's no dentistry there. Like, uh, you
She's
know,
trying to survive like this crazy wilderness. She's
yeah,
not worried about whether she's looking like a supermodel or not. You know, nobody is. Look at Kratos. He's covered
yeah,
in filth. You
yeah,
know,
and
like he
it's not
looks
a big
cool, but
deal.
nobody cares.
And you know what? So does Aloy. She looks cool, covered in filth. She looks cool. She's strong, and and that's a threat to people. And I think that's ultimately the source of a lot of this, bizarre narrative. Uh, and it's gross, and it really allows a lot of people to,
People,
show me that I'm not interested in their opinion.
people are
So
threatened by the idea that. Oh, Myron on the floor. I appreciate you stopping by. People are threatened by the idea that a woman might not need a man. You know, that's what
yeah,
it is. It doesn't make any
that's
sense.
that's exactly what it
I
is.
literally have no
And
idea what I'm doing at this point. Uh,
that's
this is Stygian Stilettos Gamer, and I am hashtag out of here, honey.